sitting in front of me. Tell me about the best leadership characteristics, best leader you can imagine working for. Passionate. And I'll repeat it for everybody so you don't have to talk into the microphone. Passionate.
Honest.
Honest, empowering.
Sets clear priorities.
They have clear priorities. Yes. Their energy, they have energy, positive energy. Good. Who else? They're motivating, empowering, inspiring. Any more ings? Challenging, trustworthy. They got your back. All right. Do we have
micromanaging?
No micromanaging. Don't worry. We'll get to the crappy leader. Hold on. Okay. All right. Do we have any other, Kylie?
Yes, we have a ton. So from Madrid, the best. They're inspiring, humble, adaptable, fair, flexible, good at prioritizing, persistent, selflessness, empathy, ambitious for others, very trusting of others, and show a lot of patience.
Awesome. Now tell me about a horrible leader here in Austin Domain. They place blame.
Micromanaging.
They're an alarmist. Egocentric. We had micromanager before.
Cuts you off while you're speaking.
They cut you off while you're speaking.
Fearful.
They're fearful. They take credit for your work.
And blame for the failures.
They blame others for failures. All right. Complainers. Don't take responsibility. Kylie.
Oh gosh, we have so many. Selfish, arrogant, untrusting, toxic, not a good listener, inflexible, no self-awareness, not great at taking feedback, not grateful, careless, also micromanaging, strict and unaccountable.
Wow, we don't want to work for that person. How many of those characteristics have anything to do with somebody's IQ? 0, big goose egg, not a single one. And that is because it is not your IQ that is going to help you be a level 5 leader. It is not your IQ that is going to help you be a resilient leader. It is the way you share that information. It's the way you connect with people. It's the way you work with people. You might say, well, a good leader is intelligent, but what good is intelligence if they can't share the information, right? So when we think about this, most of us are so busy trying to convince other people how smart we are that we forget the goal is connection. If people don't like you, they don't listen to you. I have a lot of leaders will say, I don't care if they like me as long as they respect me. That doesn't work because if, can you be a jerk and be an effective leader? There are a few, but not many, certainly not the ones people want to follow, right? It's about emotional intelligence, and your emotional intelligence is how you relate to the world. It's how you relate to people. They did a study of senior level executives and found 90% of the time, the difference between the star performers and the average performers, 90% of the time it was due to emotional intelligence traits. Okay, your emotional intelligence is comprised of an entire skill set. And just because you are good at one skill doesn't necessarily make you good at another skill. So it's a practice. And level 5 leaders understand the importance of developing this. It's empathy over ego. It is understanding that if people don't like you, they don't listen to you. Jack Welch once said, before you're a leader, success is all about developing you. Once you become a leader, success is all about developing others. And it's really hard to do that if there's no connection. So here's my multiple choice question for you, and you can chat in your answer. What is the most important leadership competency? We've got mission, vision, values, and an understanding of that. Your communication style, your mood and emotional style, subject matter expertise, and your approach to feedback or coaching. How many think it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all of the above? Do we have any guesses in chat? Or is it all of the above? Like every single letter you can imagine.
We have some people saying B, communications.
All right. So yes, these are all important. But Harvard just came out with a study that found the most important leadership competency is recognizing and understanding your mood and your emotional style. Because the leader's job is to get work done through other people. And if you're not aware of how you show up at work, is the room better when you enter it or when you leave it? And would your colleagues say the same thing? How would people describe you? And is that the way you would describe yourself? Or if you could say, here are the 5 words I wish other people would use to describe me, would you use those same words to describe yourself? Part of it is understanding how you're perceived and your social awareness. Part of it is how you navigate difficult relationships. But what we know, without a doubt, is that emotional intelligence accounts for at least 80% of our job performance, if not more. We know that on average in US dollars, for every point increase, it's usually about $1,300 increase in annual salary. We know that, yes, for US, in the US dollar, for every point you increase, it averages about $1,300 on your annual salary. Now, we know that this is not true for teachers or really important. But it's interesting because I'll talk about stress, but it's highly individual. So this is kind of off topic and I'll get here. But did you know that they did a study with police officers and they found paperwork more stressful than they did being in the line of fire? Stress is highly individual. Some people would rather, Jerry Seinfeld, fear of public speaking is the number one fear over death, which means you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. It's understanding that stress affects people differently. Good question. All right, 90% of top performers in leadership positions demonstrate high levels of emotional intelligence. 80% of bottom performers globally demonstrate low emotional intelligence. And what's cool is there's no connection. So imagine 3 circles, your personality, your IQ, and your EQ, and they all overlap, and that makes you, you. There used to be the thought process that your IQ was static. You were going to have the ability to navigate information and assimilate it and aggregate it at birth than you did when you die. Now we know through neuroplasticity that you can shift and change your brain. There are people that are blind who can grow their other senses to a point where it's unimaginable for us. The London cab drivers have an incredibly large hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's responsible for navigating all of their maps and the streets and understanding that. So your brain can change. Your emotional intelligence naturally changes as you grow, as you age, but not to a measurable enough point where it's going to have a significant difference on your performance. So it has to be a deliberate set of skills and habits. And it's the single best predictor of your success personally and professionally. So if there are any skills that you can work on to become more level 5, it would be your ability to connect with people. It would be your ability to regulate your emotion, to navigate ego, because we all end up getting in that situation where we want to get it right, or we want to be right instead of get it right. Take an example. How many of you have ever sent an email to somebody full of information only for them to respond back and say, I needed the information, can you please send it? And you already sent it. So what do? We go to our sent file, we find the original email, and we either copy and paste or we forward with the original time and date so they know that we know that they are the ones who are wrong. Now, there's some level of you got to make sure that you're covered, and I get it, but that's trying to be right rather than saying, like, here's the information next time, read your email. No, you don't want to say it like that. Okay, but what we know is that people with high levels of emotional intelligence create high trust environments. And you want to hear epic fail? I was in Romania 2 weeks ago, and I had a group of senior VPs in the room. And we were talking about high trust organizations, and Stephen Covey's son wrote Speed of Trust. And he's written another book since then, or 2 more. But anyway, I've spoken with him at a conference before. And so I said, he's brilliant. It's a great book, but he is a horrible speaker. And every person in the room started like hysterically laughing. And I said, what did I say? And they're like, he's our keynote tomorrow. He was flying to Romania to keynote that conference with all of those executive VPs. Epic fail. But high trust organizations, epic fail, but they will never forget that, have a 74% reduction in stress, 106% more energy. The average Gallup study came out and said that 70% of the current US workforce is considered either disengaged or actively disengaged, meaning they're not just miserable, they're trying to make everybody else around them miserable. It means you increase productivity, and they found that outperform low trust organizations by 286%. When you think about building trust, do you see the connection with level 5? I mean, if you are not taking credit, but you're giving praise, if you are humble and making it about the organization and the vision and not about you, those are all high trust behaviors. Now, emotional intelligence has 4 domains, at least if you follow Daniel Goleman. Now, the idea of emotional intelligence originated in the 70s, but he really popularized it in 95. And since then, it's become the biggest buzzword in organizational development all over the world because we have so much evidence pointing to the fact that this is really what defines success. It doesn't mean you don't need smarts, right? Those are benchmark capabilities. It's why you're here. Amy Cuddy, Harvard researcher, psychologist, TED speaker, said when people meet you, they ask themselves 2 questions and they ask them in this order. The first is, can I trust you? The second is, can I respect you? But you get a really intelligent group of people together and we try to prove our competence level more than our character sometimes. And I'm here to tell you that you can be really, really smart and be a horrible leader. And you can be not real bright and be a phenomenal leader. And that's where some of the key comes in. So tell me what each of these areas are. Think about self-awareness, okay? London, who can tell me an example, and you can chat it in if you don't want to, but what's an example of self-awareness? Or Madrid? Or Penfield? Or Research Park? Or downtown? Go ahead.
Understanding our bias.
Oh, understanding your bias, right? We all have these preconceived notions and we kind of validate our expectations and our thought process, and we have selective attention, which means we look for things to support our current opinion. Do you know that? Do you understand what your likelihood is? Who can give me an example of social awareness? Know your audience, right? Know your audience. I should have known that Stephen Covey Jr. was coming to speak the next day. My bad. Give me an example of self-management. Anybody? Say it one more time. Be able to control your own emotions, right? And what about relationship management?
Giving without expecting anything back.
Giving without expecting anything back. Yes. So your self-awareness is going, all right, am I aware of my strengths and weaknesses? Am I confident in my abilities? Do I know how I am perceived by others? Your self-management is, am I adaptable? Am I internally motivated? People ask me all the time, Anne, how do you stay so motivated? And my question is always, what makes you think I stay so motivated? It's not like I have unicorns farting cupcakes in my bedroom. Like doves are not released when I walk into a room. It's a choice. And it's not always an easy one. Sometimes it's a minute by minute choice. Okay. Are you adaptable? Do you control your emotions? Your social awareness, can you empathize with people? And what I've learned through my son's illness is that there's a difference between compassion and empathy. Compassion is really feeling bad for somebody. Empathy is putting yourself in that position. And sometimes that can be incredibly difficult. But we know that emotionally intelligent level 5 leaders are able to put themselves in the place of other people. And then finally, are you able to influence others, develop others, collaborate with people? They found that the 3 most efficient skills in senior executives was their ability to control their emotion and be adaptable, their ability to collaborate, and their ability to have effective interpersonal communication. So we hear how important it is to develop technical skills, but it doesn't matter unless you are someone that people want to follow. Bottom line. And these are skills you can develop. Now, somebody earlier pointed out that it's called emotional hijacking, when we are taken over by emotion and we are no longer able to think logically. And most of us just keep going and we talk slower and louder until people figure out we're right. Your emotions are automatic, but what you do with them is a choice. You're going to feel the way you feel, and it's okay to feel whatever you feel. Most of us, though, let that drive us rather than going, all right, I feel really angry. How do I want to respond? So here's what happens in your brain when you have a ton of stress, right? We are supposed to have a certain level of stress, because if we don't have a certain level of stress, we're basically bored, you know? But I hear people all the time saying, like, how are you? I'm so busy. Kind of like, okay, well, the sky is up, the ground is down, rain is wet, I'm too busy. What if you said, my life is really full? Sometimes it floweth over, but it's really full. Part of it is the way we explain stuff to ourselves, our explanatory, thank you, style. Okay, and you generally have some issues when you get stressed, right? You can confront the issue. And we, in the critical conversations class, we talked about, like, is the relationship important? Does it affect customers? Is it something that impacts your ability to do your job? Is it something that you can actually shift and change? Because if you say something like, well, the problem is I have too much to do, so I'm going to confront it and not do it. That's not confronting the problem. That's passing the buck, right? It's having the conversation with your manager or your team to say, here's everything that I've got, help me reprioritize. It's changing your interpretation. So I do this one all the time. Raise your arm up in the air. Folks who are around the globe, I want you to do this as well. We can't see you, but everyone here looks pretty stupid. All right, put your hands up in the air, finger at the ceiling. There you go. Now I want you to pretend like there's a clock on the ceiling. And I want you to trace the second hand of that clock going faster than a clock would go. There you go, clockwise to the right. Yeah. Now while you're doing that, lower your arm down just below your chest. Now what direction is your clock going? Counterclockwise. I'm a wizard. They call me Harry Potter, clockwise. There's always people like, I don't get it. There's still people in the back doing it. All right. How did that happen? You did not change direction. What shifted? Your perspective. And sometimes that's what level 5 and resilience is about, shifting your perspective. Now, my husband will tell you I am the most pessimistic motivational speaker he has ever met, because my natural inclination is Chicken Little, sky is falling. So I said, hey, honey, I can't believe that you did this. It was horrible. And he goes, what would the optimist say? And I said, you don't have a brain injury, you're not paralyzed, and you're alive. He goes, very good. Now we can mope together and feel sorry for ourselves. And I'm like, okay, well, as long as we can do that now. And then there's acceptance. It is what it is. You know, I spent a lot of years feeling pretty sorry for myself. Why do other families have kids that are so easy and mine takes out an end cap at Walmart? Why do other families get to say no to their kids and they just go, okay? Whereas mine tries to stab me. Like, why? It's not fair. But somewhere along the way, you figure out that doesn't serve you. And that's the question level 5 leaders ask a lot. Is it serving me? Is this belief, is this behavior, is this skill serving me? Is it serving the people on my team? And if it's not, stop. We are so ingrained in our habit patterns that we do and say and behave ways that we're not even aware of. And that's where you have to take a step back and saying, are these habits driving my success, or are they keeping me from it? So here's the emotional management process we go through. When you think about something that happens, like we're triggered, okay? Someone says or does something, and most of us have a consistent set of triggers. We get triggered. Immediately we have this really strong emotion, and we can't control that emotion. It just kind of is what it is. But then we have the thought that goes along with the emotion, and that's where emotionally intelligent level 5 leaders are able to put their energy, because they can reframe it and change the direction of their clock, which leads you to a different response, which ultimately gets you a different outcome. So I'm going to give you my example of what that looks like, and then I'm going to have you work through it on page 6. I hate when people miss deadlines. It pisses me off. Like, it just frustrates me. If you were to say, Ann, I'm going to miss the deadline, I'm fine with that. Like, everybody has stuff come up. But if you don't tell me and you just miss the deadline, it is a trigger for me. And it makes me angry and frustrated and disappointed. And my natural thought process is, how hard is it? You know, how hard is it just to let me know? It's not rocket science. Just let me know, which makes me defensive and closed off and negative, which leads to a damaged relationship. Now, what thought could I replace that with? Well, maybe they've got something going on personally that I don't know about, or maybe there's something they're waiting on from somebody else, or maybe I should just ask them what the holdup is and offer to help, which would make me have a different response. I'd be more open. more understanding, more empathetic, which leads to an improved relationship. So here's your job. You can either do this individually or you can do this as a group. I really don't care. I want you to identify one of your triggers. What is the initial emotion it creates? What is the thought that happens as a result, the response and the outcome? And then I want you to cut it off at the thought. Now, part of emotional intelligence is identifying your triggers proactively, so you have a way to get around them. I used to pull into my driveway and have a panic attack because I didn't know what was going to happen as soon as I walked in the door. And I realized that was triggering me every single time. So I had to create a different ritual. And my ritual was saying 3 things to myself every time I pulled in the driveway. And they're still on my car visor. 1, it is what it is. Might not be great, but I can't change it. 2, all I can do is all I can do. And I'm doing the very best I can. And 3, and you got this, girl. And I say that every morning, whether I believe it or not. You got this. And then there's that little part of me going, no, you don't. You really don't. Okay. So I want you to take a second and go through this and identify, there might be triggers that are repeated patterns, and those you can identify. What is the emotion it creates? What is the thought process, the response and the outcome, and how do you shift the thought? So again, you can work in small groups, you can work by yourself, but work. All right, can somebody in Penfield in Austin tell me what your trigger is and the process that it takes you through? Penfield.
Sure. The trigger was a change in strategy or plan mid execution. And the emotion was frustration, anger, and anxiety.
You're getting a lot of head nods over here.
Yep. And the thought was that it's difficult to move and re-engage, and that sometimes the people asking for the change don't understand the complexity or the effort in engaging that change. And then the response was that the team engaging tends to become resistant to that change, and they don't put their full energy or effort behind it. And the outcome is oftentimes an incomplete or inferior result.
Okay, great example. I mean, that never happens in real life, does it? A change in strategy midway. Now, how do you shift that thought? Penfield.
Solid question. Love to know the answer.
Oh, thank you. All right, Domain, talking to a mic. How do you reframe that thought?
So how do you reframe that thought? Well, you have to think that business is going to change direction, and probably what's lacking is an understanding of the priority. And I think that's also important to check in with yourself on what is irritating. And I think a lot of times in professional settings, we forget to ask ourselves, is this irritating me? And just because something is irritating doesn't necessarily make it bad. Right.
And or you could ask for context. You know, understanding why. Sometimes we don't take the time to understand that. Our employee, it's a game of telephone from senior leadership down to individual contributor. And every time I teach a communication class, every single person said, I wish my boss could take this class. And 2/3 of managers think they're in the top 10% of leaders. Now, I'm not a math person, but that's like some guy told me, Ann, you helped me do a total 360. So you're right back where you started. You know, the trick is, and resilient leaders get that before they're triggered, they have to start thinking through this. They have to start coming up with alternative approaches. And there's so much that you're getting right now. It is overwhelming. You can't take all this stuff away and do it all. Otherwise, it's like New Year's. Take one thing away. Start with identifying your triggers. Who, what triggers you? What creates that knee-jerk irritated reaction? What creates that initial frustration? Don't try to run, start crawling. Once you identify the trigger, then you can start proactively managing it. When you're in the situation and you have flipped your lid, start thinking about, why am I so upset right now? Is it because my ego is being challenged? Is it because I'm embarrassed? Is it because I disagree? Is it because I don't have enough information? It's really about taking time to think about the why, not just the what. And that is a skill. It is a set of habits. Now, you told me that you know the difference between fixed and growth mindset, and I had never heard of this before I started doing the research. Carol Dweck, incredible researcher, I believe she's at Stanford. Is that correct? And Carol Dweck was a teacher, and she couldn't understand why do some kids get a puzzle that's really difficult to solve and they just give up versus other kids who are like, bring it on, give me a harder puzzle. And her contention, and I think that it's right, is that it is really hard for smart people to not feel smart. And so we think about, like, for example, I always told myself I was not athletic. And I was at a conference where one of Carol Dweck's researchers was on stage. And she goes, how many of you have ever told yourself you're not athletic? And I raised my hand. She goes, you know, that's not a thing, right? And I said, no, it's really a thing. And she goes, when did you realize you were not athletic? And I said, the first time I got pegged in the face by a dodgeball. And she goes, so did you keep trying? And I said, no, I decided I did not like dodgeball. And she goes, and then what happened when you played t-ball? And I said, I never got chosen first because I cried during dodgeball. And so I grew up my whole life going, I'm not athletic. I'm smart. Because I worked really hard at school and I studied and I got good grades and I worried about how I was going to get into college and grad school and get a job. And I look back now and I realize I'm not smart. I did the things that smart people do. I used the actions. I studied hard. I asked a lot of questions. I stayed after school for tutoring. I took challenging classes. What Carol Dweck has come to the realization of is that it's not about ability, it's about action. Level 5 leadership is not an innate trait. Resilience is not an innate trait. It is about what you choose to do and how you choose to think. And Dweck says being bad at something is only bad if you're perfect, which I think is a pretty cool thing to think about. Angela Duckworth says that grit is really about persevering and keeping going. And you take all these concepts together and you build level 5. But let me give you an example of fixed versus growth. So fixed is I don't like to fail. What could be the growth mindset approach to that? I like to learn, or it's practice, right? That's all it is. It's practice. Another one, I'm either good at it or not. Research, Park. What could be an alternative to I'm either good at it or not? Okay, I can get better at it, right? I'm not good at it yet. And that's what was interesting about Carol Dweck's research and Angela Duckworth. They found that word yet is the biggest differentiator that can take you from one to another. I'm not a math person versus I'm not a math person yet. Now, that doesn't mean certain people have different skill sets and talents, but it does mean that we're not a static one thing. We're either good at it or not. It's a process in the way we think about it. So when you are confronted with an obstacle, and here's what's even more fascinating. As she was going through fixed mindset, I kept thinking, it's me. Because she'd say, do you compare yourself to other people and your success to other people? I'm like, well, yeah. Do you think you're just not a math person or you are a math person? I'm like, well, yeah. Do you hate to fail? Yeah. She's like, you will inherently not be as successful as people who are thinking, I'll figure it out. I don't understand it yet. Failure is just practice. And it's a continuum. Nobody is all of one or all of another. We are in a continuum. Another one, I'm successful because of my abilities. What's the growth? How about I tell you? Would that be helpful? I work my butt off. I'm successful because I work really hard and I do the things that will help me be successful. All right? I take criticism personally. Research Park, what's a different way you could say that in the growth mindset?
I take criticism constructively.
Oh, I like that. Feedback is constructive, you know? But most of us ask for feedback and then we justify and defend our behavior. Could you give me some feedback about my performance? Sure. I find sometimes you come off a little strong and people are intimidated by you. No, it's just that I'm really passionate about this particular topic and I'm tired and I just kind of came off strong in that meeting. Give me more feedback. Okay, well, you've been late 4 times this week. No, it's just because my car broke down and now my alarm clock broke and I'm trying to. We ask for feedback and then we justify and defend. So a really great way to get feedback is to say, can you give me an example? Ask for a specific example. I compare my success to others. And this is the one that's hard for me. What do you think, Austin Domain? Yeah, am I better tomorrow than I was today? And every day that will not be the answer. Because no one is perfect. And you could have a phenomenal day and be a level 5, and you could come in the next day and slip to 4. And it is because nobody is consistently perfect. We are consistently imperfect. And anytime you have fallible human beings working together collectively and interdependently, you're going to have conflict. What you don't want to have is a group of people who are going, I either know it or I don't. Like, find somebody else. What you don't want to have happen is, why did they get promoted faster than me? What you don't want to have happen is people go, no, I'm not going to fail because I'll get fired, knowing their manager has their back, saying, hey, I appreciate you taking the risk. Let's talk about what you could do differently next time. How do you grow people from fixed to growth beside reading the book? Yeah. All right, Madrid, what do you think? How do you get your team, your employees, how do you help them go from fixed to growth? Madrid. They're
We have
unmuting.
someone here. I think through self-awareness.
So you go from one to the other through self-awareness? Is that what you're saying?
I think would be the first step.
It
So
would be
that
the first
person
step.
is aware of his skills and his talent and strengths and where he has to work on.
Yeah, what's my benchmark right now? Where do I stand? Do I tend to be more one way than the other? And that's why self-assessment and evaluation and thinking through these things is so important. Most of us don't go, I can't wait till people see me as a failure. Most of us, we want to be perceived as credible and smart. And so it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves and to thinking that criticism is a message that you should not be here. But in reality, it's the awareness of yourself, but then it's also modeling the behavior for your staff. Like, they pay attention to what you do, not what you say. How many of you have children? Have they ever said something and you were like, where did you hear that? You. My son walked into the living room one day and said, where's the damn remote? He was 4. I said, Evan, that's not appropriate. And he goes, then stop saying it. Like, you're 4. You're 4. Part of the growth mindset is understanding that people are not always like you, that we perceive the world differently. And the nice thing about HomeAway that I love that none of my other clients have going for them is that you guys are all on the same page with understanding your social style, your communication style. So I'm going to give you a quick recap, and then we're going to talk about how that is incorporated into resilience in level 5. So you've got your reds. These folks walk fast, talk fast, think fast, eat fast, multitask, go 1,000,000 miles an hour. Their motto is, if it ain't broken, break it, because I can make it work quicker, faster, easier, and better. They are assertive. When they get stressed, they get aggressive. They are big picture thinkers. They process out loud. So you ask them a question, they talk it out. They are big picture thinkers. They have a sense of urgency, and they get frustrated when other people don't share that sense of urgency. You've got your yellows. They're the reason you have happy hour. They are positive, and they smile a lot, and they're colorful in their language, and they like to talk about stuff, and sometimes they share too much information. They're like, hey, check out this rash. I don't know what it is, but smell that. It keeps spreading. It's so gross. I'm just kidding. I don't have a rash on my arm. Anyway, you've got they're talkative, and they share lots of information. They like to be the center of attention, but they're really worried. Do people like me? Did I do something to make you mad? They go to the red. Are you mad at me? No, why? Because I saw you this morning. I said hi. You didn't say hi. Are you sure? You're not mad? Are you positive? You're not mad. So wait a minute. You're not mad. No, I'm not mad. No, you're mad at me. And the yellows get emotional when they're stressed out. Okay. Then you've got greens, really sweet, kind, patient, loyal, good team players, more introverted, like to process internally, whereas the driver and the expressive think it, say it, and then regret it. The green and the blue are thinking it, processing it, and then thinking about how to say it. The problem with the green is they don't like conflict or confrontation. So in an effort to avoid it, have you ever seen someone who's really angry and you say, how are you? And they say, I'm fine. And I'll always want to say, really? you should tell your face because that is not what you look like right now. Greens are incredibly data driven, detail oriented. They want lots of information, but they're conversely, they're super relationship focused. They want the detail, they want the information, but they really want people to get along. Like, why do you people have so much drama? Just do your job. It's not that hard, right? And then you've got the blues, and these are the folks who send back your emails with spelling and grammatical corrections. They are highly detail-oriented, incredibly methodical, process-driven, methodical approach, black and white, not a whole lot of shades of gray. They ask a bunch of questions, which other styles can perceive as being critical or skeptical, when in reality, they're just trying to gather data, and they're trying to understand things. Then you have combination, right? You have your blue and red. This is especially hard for women. Do I have any women in here who share blue and red? Okay, so how do people tell you you can come off? Blunt, abrasive, negative. And it's not that you are, right? You have like incredibly rich relationships. It's just that the blue and the red is going, look, I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to get stuff done. We can be friends outside of work. I don't have time for that. How many yellow greens do I have? And you're going, what's the point? If we don't like each other, why in the world would I work here? I'm going to fall. You're going to catch me. We're going to sing Kumbaya, and then we'll get stuff done. How many of you have blue and green? You're like, just don't call on me. Give me lots of information, some time to process. How hard is it to make up your mind? I just need time to think. How many red and yellows do I have? So this is me, and I was in New York City, and some lady stood up when I was explaining the red and yellow combination, and she sounded really upset. And she said, you're a seagull. I said, what? She was like, the red and the yellow. You're a seagull, like the bird. And I said, I do not understand what you were saying. And she goes, you fly and you squawk a lot, you crap on everything, and you fly away. And I said, that is the best description of me I've ever heard. You've got blue and yellow, and this person is detail-oriented but communicative. You've got, your red and your green who wants to be sweet and kind but ultimately needs to be in control. And we're all motivated differently, and we're all driven differently, and you could have two people with the exact same style behave very differently. Everybody has a combination of all of these. Nobody is all or one, and no style makes a better person, parent, partner, leader. But most of us like people like us. And we get frustrated when people aren't like us. So we hire people like us. We develop and coach people like us. We are more patient with people like us. And level 5 leaders understand you can't just operate out of a place of that, because then you don't get all the great ideas. Now, all the colors together, you have conflict. It sounds so awkward now in today's politically correct society to go, what color are you? That just always sounds weird to me, but what color are you? Yellow, green, red. Can I get a blue? All right, blue. You will all see the same situation differently. It's like watching the same movie from different screens. We all see a very different story, and it'd be great if you could take off your proverbial glasses and hand them to someone and say, look, here's how I see the situation. It's not personal. I just need a decision. And the other person take off their glasses and go, yeah, but I get defensive when you blame me for stuff that goes wrong without trying to understand it first. How do you use this concept to build resilience as a leader? So, Kylie, which office do you think wants to share? How does this tie into resilience?
Let's pick RPP, Research Park.
All right, Research Park. RPP, yeah, you know it. Okay, sorry. Right, Research Park. How do you use the concept of insights to build resilience and level 5 leadership? Take yourself off mute. Okay, now you answer.
Hi, Ann. This is Kelly. Yeah, I think that one thing that I would just start off with personally as a leader to develop resilience is trying to constantly be self-aware of all the different combinations of personalities that you have in order to just try and get things done here at work for one thing, but also building relationships. And you just have to know that you're always going to have conflict, and that your will as a leader has to be strong enough to be always open to like listen to your folks, listen to your people, listen to your leaders above you, and constantly be open to other people's ideas despite their personalities and despite where they are on the color wheel, and if they're in a positive or negative state, and just always be open to listening. That'd be my initial feedback.
Thanks, Kelly. That's awesome. Madrid or London, how do you tie this into building resilience as a leader?
I think maybe you take things less personally when you are contrasted with a personality that is different from yours. And maybe you can adapt the way you speak with people.
Yeah, and you're humble enough to know that your way isn't necessarily the right way. Right? It's knowing that you need each of the perspectives, and that will create conflict. And conflict is not bad. Conflict is healthy. Combat is bad. Conflict is, I'm not sure I understand your point of view. I disagree. Combat is, oh yeah, well, you're stupid and your mother's ugly. One is productive and one is not. And most of us run from conflict, so we agree for the sake of agreement, or we just think we're right and that people will eventually figure it out. Resilient leaders understand that you have to see things from different vantage points. Ask people on your team, you're a red, how do you perceive this? You're a green, what frustrates you about this? And ask an open-ended question to a green because they need time to process. So I don't want to call on a green or a blue, but if I send them questions in advance and give them time to process, they're more likely to participate in the discussion. That builds resilience. Every time you take a risk, it builds resilience. If you have a team member who's a green and you call them out and make fun of them in front of a room full of people, you destroy and crush them. They will never participate again. That is not where resilience is built. Resilience is, that's an interesting question. Hadn't thought about it that way. Who else? And it's just being aware. It's really nothing more than awareness. Because the number one question I get from managers all the time is, how do I motivate my people? How many of you have ever thought that? How do I motivate my team? I've got bad news for you. You can't. When I was the director of training at Barton Creek, and some of you I've told this story to, my boss, every time I did something well, would give me a sleeve of golf balls. Now, I'm a yellow. And as a yellow, I just want validation. You're good enough. You're smart enough. Gosh darn it, people like you and we need you. Every time I would do something well, she was an avid golfer. She would give me a sleeve of golf balls. One time I went to her and said, guess what? The CEO just said my leadership discussion was the best one I've done all year long. And she goes, oh, Anne, you're so cute. Here are some golf balls. He says that to everybody. So in one fell swoop, she didn't, not only did she not motivate me, she demotivated me. Now, I think it was Jim Collins or Guy Kawasaki who said, stop getting the wrong people and trying to motivate them and start getting the right people and figure out how not to demotivate them, right? That's the issue, because you can't make somebody motivated. All you can do is create an environment where you're tapping into what already motivates them. Pay attention to what they pay attention to. I worked there for 3 years, never once played a round of golf. But we tend to think what motivates us motivates others. My boss loved golf. Getting a tee time there was like a big treat for her. I rode the golf carts and looked at the turkeys. Like, it was just not, you hit a ball with a stick into a hole you can't even see. I don't get it, but whatever. So one thing to think about as a leader is that different people are motivated differently. And if you try to motivate everybody the same way, then you're more than likely going to be unsuccessful and have a bunch of really frustrated people. Have you ever tried to motivate somebody by something that isn't motivating to them? Give me an example. I saw you shake your head. You were just like saying, okay, all right. Happy hour. Let's go to happy hour. And you've got a bunch of introverts who are going, I've been dealing with you people all day. The last thing I want to do is deal with you drunk. Okay? Pizza party. right? Let's have a party. Not everybody wants a party. Let's get a bonus. Well, I guess that works for everybody, but for some people, it's a title. My boss said you can have $5,000 raise or title from manager to director. Your job won't change at all. I took the title because I thought where I want to go in my career, that's going to long term get me where I want to go, more than $5,000, which after taxes is about $80 a paycheck, right? It's taken the time to know your people. And a lot of time I hear reds and blues say, I don't have time to hear about your weekend. I don't care about your ugly baby. I don't want to see the pictures of your dog. Just get stuff done. Now, yellows and greens, what does that do to you? It's demotivating because it's like, great, I'm so glad you don't have time for me or care what I think, right? And it's not that any are good or bad, but if we're not looking through other people's glasses, then how in the world are we supposed to grow them? Your job is not just about growing you now. Your job is about helping your team understand this. It's bringing up these questions in meetings. All right, who in here is yellow? All right, how do you see this situation? Oh, you raised your hand. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were up. All right, you're my people. It's funny to watch this because reds are like, whatever. And yellows are like, ooh, ooh, I'm yellow. Greens are like, I'm green. And blues are going, this is ridiculous. This is a non-validated, unreliable, non-quantitative. Okay? Take time to get to know what motivates the people who work with you and for you and around you. Just because something is incredibly motivating to you does not mean it will motivate others. You take humility and will, right? Well, humility is knowing that not everybody wants what you want. Not everybody's, you work to live, right? And some people live to work. And that's not right or wrong. It just is what it is. You take a group of millennials with other generations, and there's this natural instinct to go, well, you're entitled. You're lazy, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what? In 1970, Tom Wolfe came out with a Time magazine cover coining it the me generation. Every generation thinks the new one is more narcissistic than the last. It's not just about this, it's about diversity, right? We talk about diversity and inclusion as long as those people are diverse like us. Like, yeah, I'll listen to your comment. I mean, I'm not going to do anything about it, but I'll listen to it. And it's starting to think creatively about how you engage people in these conversations differently. For example, if I've got a room full of blue and greens and I'm asking for conversation starters or I'm trying to ask a question, I'm going to get a lot of silence, not because they don't want to participate, but because they want to process and think about what they want to say before they say it, which clearly to someone like me is a foreign concept. So a lot of times we'll just make the assumption they don't have any ideas or opinions when in reality, they're just processing. So level 5 is going, how do I ask open-ended questions and engage this person, and thinking about that strategically before you start reacting. It really, like I said, this is not anything you don't know, but knowing and doing are two very different things. Knowing happens in the prefrontal cortex. Doing happens in the limbic system. I know I should be exercising every single day. Limbic system, cheeseburgers, good. Pizza, good. Think about the movie Titanic. I'm assuming everybody has seen Titanic. Okay, so was it the part of the iceberg above the water or the part below the water that ultimately sunk the ship? Below. And that's where I think our problem comes in terms of managing expectations. Most people don't fail to meet your expectations on purpose. They fail to meet your expectations because they're not really clear on what it is. I had an intern, her name was Sam. Now I'll start off by saying Sam was not incredibly bright. I learned this after the fact. But Sam came to a book signing event with me and I said, hey, business casual, okay? And Sam was like, yeah, cool, okay. And she comes to the event and she's wearing a blouse with a blazer, cut off jean shorts, fishnet hose, and Doc Martin military style boots. And I said, dude, Sam, I said business casual. She goes, I know, so cool, business casual. Sam, you're fired. But most of us don't tend to try to share the concept. I'll give you an example. Would you worry if you had a bald tire? Yes. What if I told you that tire was hanging from a tree? Then would it matter? No. What if I told you that somebody was sitting on the tire? Then what if I told you the rope was frayed? Right? The context determines the answer. You could have a tire not anywhere near a car, but we make assumptions. A bald tire, that means on my car. And we operate this way because it's impossible for us to think any other way. My husband, you're not going to believe this, but in 2013, he was in a motorcycle accident on Mopac. A smart car hit him from behind. The irony. I know, you can't make this stuff up. So before the accident, he had cleaned our grill. He took it all apart and cleaned it. And I'm normally not the griller of the family. I'm inside doing all the side dishes and, drinking wine. And so he puts the grill back together, but he got in the accident, broke 8 ribs. He was, laid up at home. And I was grilling dinner, and I looked down where the grease pan is supposed to be. And I see my 20-pound white dog, Bernie, going, blah, 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 blah. And it's like burning his nose. He doesn't care. It's the best day ever. And I yell in the house, who cleans a grill and doesn't replace the grease pan? And without missing a beat, my husband yells back, who grills dinner without checking to see if there's a grease pan? Now, I'll give you a minute to take sides. Now, we know I was right in that one, I think. But most of us are saying, I need you here on time. Okay, well, does that mean I get here at 8, grab a cup of coffee, have a conversation, sit at my desk at 8:15? Or does that mean I come in at 7:30, grab a cup of coffee, have a conversation, be ready to go at 8? It's like saying to your customer service reps, smile on the phone, but not telling them why. Because you can see the smile. I worked at a call center. We had mirrors on our cubicles. It's like saying, good job, without explaining what they did that was a good job. Right? It's thinking about things in terms of explaining the context behind it. I heard you on this call. I know the customer was getting escalated. I really appreciate the way you were able to de-escalate the situation. You didn't even need to call a supervisor. You were able to manage it yourself. Really impressive. Share the context. If someone's doing something that is behaviorally unacceptable, share why. Because when you do this, here's the ramification. Here's how it impacts us. So anytime you're trying to gain alignment, the first thing is, how do we define success? Because if you go into a room in a meeting with somebody and your definition of success is different than theirs, you're tasked with getting it done on budget, they're tasked with getting it done quick. Who's right? No one. It's just different. How do you define success? Next, what needs to happen by when, and do we have the same perception of that? And who are the champions? How many times do we have meetings to discuss something that we should have figured out in the first meeting? Well, let's schedule another meeting to talk about what we talked about in this meeting. And it's a waste of time. What needs to happen by when, and who is owning it? Next, what are my high payoff activities? What are my priorities? You can said a resilient leader is focused on priorities, right? Well, high payoff activity is the 80-20 rule. 20% of X generates 80% of Y. So 20% of your tasks on any given day generate 80% of your results. Do you know what yours are, and is your perception the same as your manager's? Because I might think that I'm working on something as hard as I possibly can, and you're still not satisfied with what I'm doing, and in reality, we have different perceptions of what's more important. Here's an assignment I want you to take back, and I want you to do this with your employees, and I want you to do this with your direct manager. Explain high payoff activities. It's like 20% of HomeAway customers generate 80% of the headaches. 20% generate 80% of the revenue. 20% of the tasks you do on any given day generate 80% of your results. When you go to your employee, I want you to say, identify what you think your top 6 high payoff activities are. Independently of that person, you come up with what you think their top 6 should be. Have a conversation and compare your list. Because most people, one-on-ones turn into status checks. Where are we on this? Where are we on that? Where are we in this? And it often falls off in terms of, well, I've been working really hard on this and I'm not sure I'm getting the results you want. Can you help me reprioritize? You write down what you think your top 6 should be. Go to your manager, ask them to write down what they think they should be. Compare your list. Do we have the same set of priorities? And who do I need on board? This is a level 5 leader thing, guys. Like, whose help do we need? Because managers who do not have leadership skills operate in silos. Let's protect our team. Level 5 leaders say, what's the point if we're not collectively working toward a goal, right? All right, how are you doing so far? Who can tell me in the Research Park office what the Stockdale principle is? Does anybody here know what the Stockdale principle is? No. Okay, so Research Park, you're off the hook for this. The Stockdale principle. So there was a officer named Stockdale, and he was held as a prisoner of war, and he was literally tortured over 20 times. And all of the people around him were not surviving. And they said, how is it possible that you can survive this? And he said, because I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew there was something on the other side. And they're like, while they're beating you, you're able to have this optimistic viewpoint. And he's like, well, I mean, it's not going to stay like this forever. It's going to change. So the Stockdale principle when it comes to organizations is having the faith that in the end, regardless of what happens, you will prevail. Balanced with the healthy skepticism of saying, what are the brutal facts? What's going to get in the way? So think about a time when you were tasked with a project and you were told, do whatever you need to do to get it done and know that it's going to work. But there were also some significant challenges. How do you balance these two? And this is a question that I want to open up to any office, anywhere, and to this office. How, when it comes to your mission, your vision, HomeAway's goals, level 5 leadership, building a team toward a vision, how do you balance these? Because they can seem like they're in direct opposition.
I can talk about a huge project that I was on in 2011 and 2012.
Okay.
And I worked at REI at the time, and I was leading this huge multi-million-dollar network refresh across all 150 stores. And there were all kinds of problems, but the thing is, like, you have to know and believe in yourself no matter what. And it was like a year and a half that my job was like on the line. Like, I was coming to work being told, like, you need to get this all these hundreds of problems figured out or you're out. And I was like, you all, when I were done, you will trust me. And everybody at the end of the project, it was like awesome at the end when we finally figured out everything that was going on and we finally fixed everything. I left REI and I came here, and a couple of years later, the director that I worked with, he said that because I was just unwavering in my belief that we were going to get where we were going to go, that we got there, and that nobody at the time could see it. But that, a year after I left, that people were like, wow, that person like really altered how we look at our projects. And so that is just knowing that no matter what crap you have to face, that you just have to keep believing in yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. Anybody else have an example? That was a perfect example. You got a really hard project. I know none of you have ever had that, where it feels like it's an uphill battle, right? But in the back of your head, you have to truly believe it. It's like you don't go climb Mount Everest and go, I'm probably going to die. You go to climb Mount Everest saying, I am absolutely 100% possible I can get to base camp 1. And then you think about it and you prepare for it. I know I can get to 2. And it's really hard to balance that, especially when you're having this happen in your personal life and in your professional life, right? There's only so much change we can absorb. And when you've got something going on at home that seems overwhelming, like this fall, my husband's fall I was like, he's in the hospital. I'm going, I'm talking about the Stockdale paradigm, like paradox later tomorrow, right? And he said, what is it? And I said, it's you knowing that eventually you're going to get over this, but that it's going to suck in order to get there, right? And that's what it boils down to. Do you know, regardless of whatever happens, that you are going to be successful and help your team experience that emotion while still knowing that there's going to be bumps in the road? It's never perfect, ever. But it's also looking for the context. The other thing that level 5 leaders have been found to do is this idea called the hedgehog principle. And the hedgehog principle is basically saying, all right, HomeAway leaders, what are you deeply passionate about? And I don't mean like snow skiing. I mean like at work, what are you deeply committed to? What are you deeply passionate about as a leader? Next, what can you be the best in the world at? What does HomeAway do that nobody else can do? Not Airbnb, not old Expedia. What is it that HomeAway does better than anybody else in the world besides collect really cool snow globes? Because that is awesome. And I love the downtown office. And every time I go there, I'm like a little kid and I push the button and they go, and I go, oh my God, that's so awesome. Okay. And what drives your economic engine? And I can guarantee you that if you do not know the answers to these questions, your team won't either. You have to know this. So this is where the group work comes in. Reds, I'm sorry. Yellows, you're welcome. Greens, just chill. Blues, stop arguing. I want you to break up into groups. You have 5 minutes, and I want you to answer these questions as you see it for HomeAway, right? What are you deeply passionate about? It can be yours, but what is HomeAway deeply passionate about? It's not just a mission statement on in a frame on a wall. Like if you had to explain it to your employees, because here's what's fascinating. When I do training, I ask managers, do you think your employees understand how what they do contributes to the success of the organization? Oh yeah, we tell them all the time. Every time we have a one-on-one, we talk about how their role translates. You ask employees, how many of you know how your role directly translates to the success of the organization? Very few. Only the ones who have level 5 leaders or level 4 leaders, because we just make the assumption people should just know, right? You're in IT, you should just know how you translate that. But how do I know how to gather user requirements and which ones are realistic and which ones aren't? As someone who doesn't know anything about IT, my husband does all our website and everything like that. And I'll say, honey, strive for progress, not perfection, iterate. And he's going, that doesn't work in this particular thing. It's going to be broken. And as a red, I'm like, who cares? No one goes to our site anyway. It doesn't matter. Okay. So it's balancing that pragmatism with the optimism. It's thinking about your unique value proposition. So in each of the offices, I want you to break up into groups. Here, I want you to break up into groups. What is your answer to those? Like, how have you found that, and how do you describe it to your team? Okay, and I'll walk around and answer questions that you might have. Go for it. You got 5 minutes. All right, folks in downtown Austin. Somebody give me an example of your 3 hogs, your 3 hedgehogs, or your 3 circles in downtown Austin.
We didn't really get through all 3. We had a deep discussion on one, I think, but we talked about what we're deeply passionate about is connecting people in providing the space that they need to connect with one another. And also the economic engine hedgehog part, we said that's an element of what we care deeply about, is providing this ability for people to make money on their investment. We started talking about what we can be best in the world at, and that was kind of creating products that work best for travelers, helping them find the perfect match of their the property that most meets their needs. But we didn't get to 3.
That's okay. First, thank you for sharing. And second question, follow up to that is, how does that translate into the way you lead? And I know I'm putting you on the spot.
I think it could probably help with prioritization.
Okay, it can help with prioritization. Good. What else? How does that translate into the way you lead? What I find is that people lead the part that's important to them, right? Like, so if you're the IT team, you're leading in terms of making sure that the information and the technology are correct, but sometimes that doesn't necessarily translate into helping your team understand how they need to partner with the sales team, right? So I hate to call on you because you've been such a great contributor, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but could you share your example? Because I overheard it, and it's a really good one. Nice and loud.
So I work on the security engineering team at HomeAway, and so I only try to answer this question from within a security engineering context. So, and this is what I already tell my team, and it's, what do we care deeply about? We want to unlock the velocity of the business. So security typically will get in the way of everything, and we want to get out of the way. We want to be the best security engineering program in the world. Like, I literally want to change how security works, not at HomeAway, but literally everywhere. And then what drives our economic engine is that if we provide certainty to the business, then the business can go in a business direction, right? Like, so a lot of times we'll be sitting in advisory capacities to business decisions, and people will be asking us for permission to do something. And so I try to tell my team, like, provide that certainty as fast as possible. because that way people can go forward and people can move fast, and then that's how we have a direct impact on business growth.
All right, and now who's the department that you work closely with?
We work with a lot of DevOps organizations. We work with the Cloud Edge team. I mean, we're a global services organization, so we work programmatic, traffic acquisition team. I mean, like, if it's a team at HomeAway, we work with it.
Okay, so now hard question, and I don't know that there's a right answer to this. How could your definitions of these three things contradict, conflict, or get in the way of another team's version of this?
Well, I think within the security team, you definitely could find that conflict. Like the application security team, for instance, if they're having a particularly gnarly set of circumstances with some developer orgs that are maybe trying to bypass or get around security, sometimes they're having to kind of tighten the screws a little bit on the DevOps organization to kind of remind them that, hey, we do have a security team and you do have to care about security. And so if I'm telling my team, hey, go provide certainty and let's get out of the way, that sometimes there may be conflicting messages that the DevOps organization will hear. And so we have to, the application security team and my team have to kind of work together to make sure that we're presenting a unified front.
Good. Here's the thing, have the conversation with your team and facilitate it from them. Don't go in and say, here's what we're most deeply passionate about. Here's what we do better than anyone in the world. Here's our, facilitate it from people, because then they buy in and then they get it, and then transfer that information to how it applies to their role. We all want to know how we fit into the puzzle. And sometimes in organizations, we end up operating as individual puzzle pieces, and then we sprinkle a few in at a time and go create a picture. Rather than saying, here's what HomeAway feels. Now let's talk about it per area, and let's talk about how that affects everybody working together. If you don't have that clarity, then it's hard to be resilient when you face a setback because you don't know what you're headed toward. And then we use different language and different priorities. And it really boils down to, if you truly want to grow you and the team, everybody has to be clear on what you're passionate about. Everybody has to be clear on the goal. And if there's a contradiction, bring it out and talk about it, because sometimes there will be a contradiction. I'll give you a perfect example. This morning, I got locked out because I'm not that bright and I didn't think about getting back in the door. So I went out to my car to get something and I stood at the door, and the security team, like physical security team, let me in. And he said, who are you here to see? And I said, oh, don't worry about it. I'm downstairs. I'm good to go. And he goes, nope, that's okay. I'll escort you and get a sign off. Now, he's deeply passionate about security, as he should be. I was deeply passionate about not being late. Those can contradict, and it doesn't mean either is right or wrong, but they're different perspectives. So it's important to really just talk about it. So now let's get into grit and resilience. This is the part where I have friends who say, Ann, you need to do hot yoga and drink kale smoothies. And my belief is that if you like kale smoothies, you haven't tried bacon. To me, kale is kind of like wet sadness, hairy spinach, but what works for one person will not work for another. I'm going to throw out all kinds of things. Your friends are like, oh, run, you'll get a runner's high. I have 2 titanium pins in my left foot. Jimmy Buffett concert, coconut bra, long story. But I am not going to feel good if I run. I know, my whole family is so jacked up. It's so messed up, right? What works for one will not work for another. So we want to find out how you find what works for you. And then more importantly, how do you encourage your team to identify what works for them, right? Or your individuals. So my mom's a flight attendant. She was a court reporter for 30 years. And in my TED Talk, my first TED Talk, I said, well, my mom had always wanted to be a flight attendant. And she heard my TED Talk and she said, why would you say that? I never wanted to be a flight attendant. I'm like, then why did you become a flight attendant at 51? And she said, because I had just gotten divorced and I was afraid to travel alone and I refused to let fear hold me back. So I figured, what better way to experience the world than as a flight attendant? And I thought, that's kind of ballsy. She's 69 now. She just won Flight Attendant of the Month. And she makes, I'm not allowed to tell you which airline that she works for, so we'll just call it Southwest. But she makes these announcements, and this is my favorite one. In case of a sudden loss of cabin pressure, please place your mask on and then assist your child. And if you're traveling with more than one child, please pick your favorite or the one with the most potential. And she says that all the time. And I'm like, Mom, really? Like, yeah. And she's like, oh, come on, they like it. And then she says stupid stuff like turn off your blackberry, your blueberry, your strawberry, all your berries. And I'm like, oh. I don't fly with her. All right. But there's a reason they tell you to put your mask on first, right? And it's because if you are not taking care of you, you are not taking care of others. And there is enough research to show that resilient leaders have better teams. They're higher in productivity, they're happier, they're more engaged. Aetna just did a study on mindfulness programs and workplace wellness programs. And they found after the study, there was a self-reported decrease in pain by 19%, an increase in quality of sleep by 20%, a decrease in stress by 30%. And the average participant saved 62 hours a week, which resulted in a $39 million increase to their bottom line. And most of us are going, I'd love to take care of myself, but I don't have time. And we're all guilty of it. I teach this stuff for a living and haven't slept since Friday. Right? We teach it for a living. This morning, my mom was like, are you taking care of yourself? And I'm like, are you taking care of yourself? She came in to help with my husband. She just texted me, is everything okay? What do you need? A nap. I need a nap, right? But we don't take care. We're so busy being busy, and we don't realize that busy doesn't equal productive. It equals tired. Level 5 leaders, resilient leaders, know that there is no reason to be busy for the sake of busyness. We don't need to get caught in activity traps. It's about being productive. And so how many of you have ever heard of high intensity interval training? It's like you burst at speed and then you rest for 10 seconds, and then you burst at speed and you rest for 10 seconds. And the reason they do that is because it speeds up your metabolism much faster than staying at a constant rate. Well, that is how we operate. Most of us just operate at this high level of intensity all the time, and you cannot do that consistently. If you are under stress long enough, your immune system will attack itself. I'm living proof. If you are under enough stress and you don't have an outlet, I watch people get off planes and they're like looking for an outlet for their phone, and they're like mice looking for cheese. And they're trying to find an outlet. How many times do you put yourself in airplane mode? What? Outside of the airplane. And now people are connected on the plane, sending emails back and forth. Like when I was a kid, if the phone rang, you had to pick it up off the wall, and it was a surprise who was on it. And if you didn't answer, you just weren't available. When I was a kid, you had 3 channels to choose from. You had to get up off the couch, go adjust the antenna. One of them was always MASH for whatever reason. You know, if you wanted to have to write a book report, you prayed it was an Encyclopedia Britannica that you already had because you were waiting for every other letter to arrive. Now, the answer to every question is at our fingertips. We are the most educated, miserable country in the world. Now, guys, I can't speak for you in Madrid and in London, but I can tell you that antidepressants in the US have gone up 400% since 1980. No judgment here. I'm on everything but roller skates, right? But our ability to be more busy doesn't make us any happier. In fact, it's having the opposite effect. We're no more productive than we were 10 years ago. We just have more to be busy about. Duke did a study in the 90s, and they basically took a group of people who suffered from depression, and they had half the group exercise 3 times a week, 40 minutes each time, moderate intensity, meaning you could still have a conversation while you were exercising. And they took a group of people and put them on antidepressants. The group that was on antidepressants decreased depressive symptoms by 47%. The group that exercised decreased depressive symptoms by 45%. In Europe, they did a study of 63,000 individuals, same thing, moderate level of intensity, 3 times a week, 40, 45 minutes each time. They decreased their risk of dying prematurely by 35%. 35%, and most of us are like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. You know, if you are not taking care of you, your team doesn't think it's okay to take care of them. I worked with a young lady who said, I said, what do you want to do to take care of you? And she said, I've always wanted to take dance lessons. And I'm like, then why don't you take dance lessons? She said, because they're at 7 o'clock at night and my boss won't let me leave yet. I said, well, what time are you there in the morning? She's like, 7. What message are you sending? Are you sending emails at 3 a.m.? Now, it's hard at a global organization, I understand, because it's when, it's opposite and everything. When I teach for APJ, when I teach for India or China and I'm doing virtual stuff, I teach from 10 p.m. to midnight. And it's super hard, usually because I'm already drunk. But I mean, I'm just joking. The HR team in the back is like, whoa, Millie. Whoa. You have to strategically stop. We are human beings, not human doings. You have to strategically stop and figure out how to take time to repair. You teach other people how to have vacations, but I'm willing to bet when you're on vacation, you spend the first 3 days trying to come down off the level of cortisol that you are operating off of. And then you start counting down the days until you have to go home. And on the way back, you're dreading the emails and the phone calls and everything that you've already looked at because you just couldn't not look. We touch the iPhone or a smartphone every 6 minutes in the United States, an average of 150 times a day. 70% of Americans sleep with their phone next to their bed. And the excuse they use, they make those. 3% of Americans sleep with it in their hand because it takes too long to go, hello. Hello. Okay. Now, I swim. That's one of the ways I take care of myself. I swim. And even though I don't love exercise, and I look like a total dork because I had radiation, and so my neck gets really messed up when I turn it side to side, so I have a snorkel. So if you ever see it, I know, right? I look like a total dork. I've got goggles, a swim cap, a snorkel. People laugh at me. It's great, but I meditate underwater. It's wonderful. But I swim in a pool, and there's a line painted on the bottom. Why do they do that? To help you go in a straight line. Now, what happens if you swim in an open ocean and try to go in a straight line? You get carried away by the current. That's why they'll tell you if you are going to swim in open water, you need to have an immovable object that you are working toward, a lighthouse, a buoy, or a dock. And my question for you is, what is your lighthouse? What are you so deeply passionate about? Not just HomeAway, but you personally, what are you so deeply passionate about that you can endure the storms and the waves and the setbacks and everything else that goes into it? Because if you don't have something to look forward to, you end up where you're headed. What does success look like for you? My husband and I want to get an RV. I know that sounds stupid. I've never been in one ever. Until 2 years ago, we thought, what better way than to bond with our children, one of whom is incredibly mentally ill, than to be in a small confined space on wheels. So we rented this gigantic 36-foot bus. We spent an entire day putting everything in its place. Now, mind you, I'd never even driven a pickup truck, let alone a 36-foot gigantic thing. And so we pack everything nice and neatly. We're like a Robin Williams movie. We take our first turn, everything falls out. And I'm like, not the wine. And it was just one of those things where it was like so much fun minus the kids that we did it again, minus the kids. And we drove to Colorado, and it was incredible. My husband said, my only request, Anna, is that we don't take the dogs. I don't want anything that's going to lick me, jump in my lap, pant, drool. And I'm like, well, there goes my evening. But took a while for that one. But the point is you got to have a definition of success. And it, like I said, your eulogy and your resume can't be the same. In order for you to be resilient enough to help your teams grow, you have to take care of you. Not when you have time. You will never have time. You have to make the time. So here's what I do. I sit down every month. I have a glass or 4 of wine, and I go through this exercise. I'm kidding. It's vodka. I go through this exercise, and you have this handout, and I want you to take a minute and set a goal, just one, not 6. These are my categories, but you can use whatever categories you want, right? I don't care, but set a goal, something you can accomplish in the next 7 days. And you know SMART goals, not like I'd love to be more athletic. That's not a SMART goal. I want to be a better communicator. Great, so do I. That's not a SMART goal. One thing that you can accomplish in the next 7 days, and write it down, because people who write down their goals are 88% more likely to accomplish them than those that just think about them. Research, Park, or Penfield. I want to know how you lead to help your teams be resilient. Research, Park, or Penfield. How do you lead to build resilience in your team? Research Park or Penfield? How do you lead?
So this is Mike talking from RPP. One of the things is this: you have to set the example. You can't be flustered by the small things. You need to make sure that when everyone gets their moment to say what's bad about whatever's happening, and then you buckle down and you figure out how to move forward and get things addressed.
Yeah, and that's great. And most of us don't want to discuss the uncomfortable emotions because we don't like being uncomfortable, but you have to get them out and talk about them or you'll act it out. So if you have a team member who's having a conflict with another team member and you're green, you lead with green and you're thinking, I don't like conflict, so you avoid it and it becomes worse. You're not building resilience through the relationship, right? If you are staying here till midnight every night and available 24/7, you're basically sending the expectation to the people on your team that you expect them to do that too. I'm not suggesting you never have to send an email late at night, but you could say, don't respond. No need to respond. You know, FYI, when you get in the morning, not urgent. Okay. When we start getting to this habit of feeling like everything is urgent, nothing becomes important. We end up in that tyranny of the urgent. Fires, emergencies, but not accomplishing anything. So I'm going to throw out about 6 different resilience strategies. Not everyone will work for you, but these are all research-backed resilience strategies that have been proven to help you grow grit, build strength, improve courage, and bounce back easier, faster, and better. Now, some of these I did without knowing they were skills that I should have developed. And some of these I've learned I didn't do it all and have since tried to practice them because I know they work. But I don't get it right every single day. I don't get it right sometimes in the same day more than one time. Again, knowing doesn't translate into doing, so you have to remind people of this over and over and over again. It's okay to take care of you. You know, work-life balance when I was growing up with my parents was you leave work at work and home at home. Now it's how do I integrate the two so that if I need to go to a doctor's appointment, I can work at 7 at night. And it looks different for different people. One is family and friends are the family you choose, so choose wisely. You can't pick your crazy family, but you can choose your friends. And I got to tell you, you're looking at me shocked. Oh, you were yawning. I was like, no, my family's crazy. I don't know about yours, but one thing you can do, they have found that your friendships dictate your level of health more than your family relationships. So I called upon my tribe. Most people, when something happens, they're like, what can I do? And we say, nothing, I'm fine. I called upon my girls and I said, ladies, I need food. I got meals for every night of the week this week. Tell people specifically what they can do to support you. Most of us just reach out, go, whatever you need, I'm here. And then we just hope they don't reach out. You know, like, I'll help you as long as I'm not inconvenienced. Reach out and make connections regularly. Build relationships at work. Build relationships with your staff. You don't have to be best friends or beer drinking buddies, but you got to care about who they are as a person and what they care about. Because I can tell you, asking them about their sick dog or kid or vacation is going to mean the world to them if they feel like you connect with them as a person. Another resilience building strategy, optimism, and the way you process the world. Now, this is a genetic trait or predisposition, and I am predisposed toward glass half empty. My husband is predisposed toward glass half full. He made this slide, and I said, but it's half empty. And he said, no, negative Nilly, it's half full. Now, you tell me. That is half empty. Thank you. But then he's like, if you ran a marathon and didn't have any water, you'd feel pretty darn grateful. And I'm like, that wasn't the question. However, let me share with you the benefits of seeing things half full. People who are optimistic are perceived as more competent and attractive. Like already I'm in, okay? They have higher income, higher levels of physical and mental resilience, better cardiovascular health, more successful relationships. And it doesn't mean you pretend that stuff isn't wrong. You have to acknowledge the stuff that goes wrong, but then really think about how you choose to view it. I still haven't gotten there with this latest incident of falling. I know I'm going to look back and this is going to be like a lobster growing opportunity. I'm in the process, and it doesn't mean you have to explain everything right when it happens, okay? But I can guarantee you everything that happens, I think we keep getting presented with the same lessons until we figure it out. And if there's a type of person who drives us absolutely crazy, we keep getting that same type of person in our life, right? You are getting chances to practice. Optimism is one of those. And it doesn't mean you don't look at the event and go, that's crappy. It means you go, okay, how can I use it? How can I get better as a result of it? One of my favorites, acts of service. That's Senator Kirk Watson in Austin. I volunteer, MC, and work with NAMI Austin, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and a portion of all my book proceeds go to them selfishly. Because an act of kindness, an act of selflessness creates more dopamine than any other exercise ever tested. And dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter in your brain. I was at a conference and there was a woman in front of me at a Starbucks, and it was clear she'd never, ever been to a Starbucks. And so she's standing there, what's a venti? What's a pump? What's a latte? I'm like, oh, Lord. I just wanted a cup of black coffee and I was in a hurry. And I said, ma'am, I don't mean to be rude, but I'm happy to pay for your coffee. I left my room number and a tip, and you just tell her what you want and I am all over it. And so she's like, I'll have a venti pumpkin spice latte. I'll have a blueberry scone, a bottle of water. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But she turned around and she was crying. And I said, why are you crying? I'm sorry if I was rude. She said, no, it's my birthday and you're the only one who will get me a present. Like, when's the last time you did an act of service where no one could help you back? And it doesn't have to be huge. It could be, I'm going to the break room. Do you want something? I see people walk around the hallways, not just here, but everywhere, and they're on their phone. Like, they're doing this. We give that 5-inch piece of hardware more time and attention than the people we work with and around. Now the phone is just an app on a larger device we hope we don't have to use. Take time to give, and not just money, time. And it doesn't have to be a huge social cause, but we do know that millennials who are involved with social causes at work are more highly engaged and productive. Sometimes it's helping them prioritize what that looks like. But acts of service trigger the same part of your brain as sex and chocolate. Same dopamine stuff. My favorite, humor. I listen to the Comedy Channel every day. I listened to it this morning on the way. If you see me in my car, I will be snorting laughing, because you can trick your brain into feeling better and to release serotonin and dopamine. My favorite joke right now. Woman gets on a bus with her baby. The bus driver looks at her and said, that is the ugliest baby I have ever seen. And the woman is like taken aback. She goes to the back of the bus. She sits down. She tells the guy next to her, can you believe the bus driver insulted me? He goes, you're not going to let him get away with that, are you? Go give him a piece of your mind. Go ahead. I'll hold your monkey. I like that one. Okay. Humor. They found that a single smile generates the same brain activity as 2,000 chocolate bars. Now, I want to be the one who conducts that study, right? But humor is healing. And if you can't laugh at something else, laugh at yourself. They know that self-deprecating leaders, the ones who kind of poke fun at themselves, have higher engaged teams that are more productive because you're more like level 5. Nobody wants that perfect person. And we all know that person. Like, we spend so much time posting on Facebook how perfect our life is. You know what you didn't see me post? This morning at 4 a.m., how many of you have pets? So you know there's no sound that will wake you out of a dead sleep faster than the one I heard today at 4 a.m. And it's never on tile. I mean, there can be carpet tile right there. Right? Nobody posts the yucky stuff. Nobody says, me and my partner had a really crappy fight by the dishwasher this morning. We show the best version of us, and everybody else spends so much time feeling alone because they feel like everyone else has it figured out. Raise your hand if you have it all figured out. I had one lady, her name was Paula, and she raised her hand, and I just called her Perfect Paula for the rest of the training. Like, come on, Perfect Paula, let's go, let's do this. If someone tells you they all have it all figured out, they're living on a river called denial. They are not telling you the truth. Your team needs to understand that they're allowed to be human. Your employees need to understand that they're allowed to have crappy days and bad moods. And suck it up, buttercup isn't always the best answer, right? We have to have permission to be human. Humor is a universal language. I was just in Slovakia. Now here's an example of a difference in style. I walk in the office, I'm like, hey, how are you? Hi, how you doing? Hey, good to see you. Hi. And nobody says anything to me. And I'm like, do I smell? Do I have something in my teeth? Is my zipper open? Like, what's going on? And I asked, and one of the women said, well, in America, you guys just say, hi, how are you? And you keep walking. Like, we don't even know why you ask, right? If you're not going to stop and have a meaningful conversation, don't waste my time. And so culturally, sometimes there are minute differences that we're not even aware of, right? It can get easy to have conference calls, have Skype calls, have video conferencing calls. I know it's not as comfortable, but it makes that connection. And laugh. Really, lighten up. You are in a unique opportunity. You are not surgeons. No one is going to die. I mean, eventually, but not as a result of what you're doing, right? Take a deep breath. Laugh. It's important. It's healthy. It's a resilience building strategy. Gratitude is powerful, and I had no idea how much, and it's not when I practiced. I walked around going, what do I have to be grateful for? I got a sick kid. I got da-da-da-da-da. Well, guess what? They did a study for 2,000 managers, and they said, how important is gratitude in your everyday practice? Not just, hey, thanks, good job, but like, thanks, good job, you did this specifically well, I appreciate it. And unanimously, every manager said it's critically important. They said, how many of you do this on a daily basis? Less than 10%. Knowing doesn't translate into doing. Write a thank you letter on paper once a week and send it to somebody. Write a text saying, I appreciate X, you were helpful. Send a message, right? It's really easy to do. And what's so great about our brain is that you don't even have to find anything to be grateful for. The simple act of looking releases serotonin and dopamine. And because we find what we look for, the more you look for to be grateful for, the more you find it. Watch, I can prove it. How many of you have ever dated someone where at the beginning of the relationship, everything this person did was adorable? You thought they could be the one. The way they walk is cute. The way they talk is cute. The way they tell stories warms your heart. Somewhere along the way, you figure out they are not the one, and everything they do drives you crazy. Watching them chew makes you nauseous. Anybody dated that person? Anybody still married? Look for things to be grateful for and look for reasons to salute your team. Not meaningless, good job, gang, but really specific, sincere thanks. I appreciate your participation today. Your smile has made this much easier for me. Thank you for being close to the front and not being afraid to be here. I appreciate the hug I got this morning because that releases serotonin and dopamine. Now, I'm not saying go around massage training everybody. I have a client and I always send out like a thing like, what should I know? What should I do, not do? And this woman goes, and I'm speaking there, I think next week, and she goes, we're a group of librarians and our last speaker had us touch each other and that did not go well. And from an HR standpoint, I really wanted to ask some questions, but I said, don't worry, no massage trains here. Okay. Your ability to display gratitude is demonstrated to have impacts on sleep, mood, optimism, cardiovascular health. It tamps down your stress response. Really important. Exercise is one of the few things you can do that repairs the gray matter in your brain responsible for lack of attention and lack of emotional regulation. Exercise and sleep. You guys know computers. Do they still do defragging? Right? That's what your brain does when you sleep. It's defragging, and research has shown you need at least 7, usually 8 hours to do that. I know people are like, oh, sleep when I'm dead. You have to sleep now. Not now. Okay? All right. Mindfulness and leadership. Again, if you had told me that this was a resilience building strategy, I would have told you you were nuts. I do not want to sit and find my inner Zen. I do not want to eat tofu. I do not want to be in a full lotus position until I learned that this is the single most important thing you can do to repair stress neurons and to be an improved leader. And there is study after study after study documenting it. So let me give you the difference between mindfulness and meditation because I was really confused and I didn't know how to do any of this stuff until I downloaded an app that taught me how. Okay, so now they have technology that I'm telling you to put down that I want you to pick up at some point because, okay, but meditation is nothing more than paying attention to your breath. And every time your mind wanders, you come back to your breath. And people told me that like it was so easy. And so I would sit there and I'd breathe and then they'd be like, I forgot to email Aaron. No, breathe. What am I going to have for dinner? No. breathe. Why does my leg itch? Do we have fleas here? No, breathe. And I would get so frustrated, I would just stop until I learned that you cannot mess it up. It is like playing whack-a-mole with your thoughts, and you're supposed to. Every time you bring yourself back to your breath, you're catching yourself mind wandering. And sometimes I don't even catch my mind wandering the whole meditation. And that's okay. We're not trained to be still. So as you bring yourself back to the breath, what that's doing is it's building the muscle memory responsible for emotional regulation. So you can have a really crappy day and not get carried away. They have found that mindfulness, which is different than meditation, is really helping teachers have more engaged students, and that it works better than other relaxation techniques because it, like you think about relaxation, right? We ruminate. That email that we sent or the response we read, and we play it in our mind over and over and over again. Well, meditation teaches you, bless you, to acknowledge that and then go back to breath. And so you start practicing that over and over and over, and other people are going to notice the difference in you before you notice the difference in you. Mindfulness is just paying attention on purpose. Bless you. I have a board in my office that says collect delicious moments, and I call delicious moments anything that you just take for granted but you should savor. The first sip of coffee, a hilarious laugh that hurts your stomach, an email that just thanks you because you just like really help somebody. And I cut all that stuff out or take pictures of it. I've had someone send me a thank you note after a class. They're all on my board. Because when we're kids, everybody reads us these books that say, and they lived happily ever after. And then you get to be older and you lose a job, or you get sick, or you get divorced. And then all of a sudden we're like, well, great, I screwed it up. Life is not a constant state of happy. It is a collection of moments. And we get to choose which ones we focus on, right? Focus on those good moments. And just saying it doesn't mean I always get it right. You know, it's a practice. That's why this stuff is a practice. But leaders who practice mindfulness with their teams are the ones who say, let's take a step back. Why are you so frustrated right now? Tell me what's going on in your head. You seem defensive. Not just like get over it, but I can see that what I just said had an impact on you. Tell me what is going on. It's okay. Speak your mind. It's going, we didn't meet our goal, and that's okay. Instead of assigning blame, let's figure out what we need to do differently and be mindful of the process we use. And there are little tiny subtle things like that. So when you think about how do I build resilience, these are all things that you can do individually. Ray Wiley Hubbard is an amazing singer-songwriter in Austin, and he has a lyric in his song, and he says, the days that I keep my gratitude higher than my expectations, well, I have really good days. And what I have found is that when I am angry, sad, frustrated, or disappointed, it is usually because my expectations and reality are out of alignment. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Most of us are doing the very best we can with what we have. We are trying to get through this thing called life together, and nobody has all the answers, and people assume because you're a manager, you do. Show them that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to be human, and that it's okay to not know all the answers. So here's what I want you to do. We only have a few minutes. I want you to get back with your groups, and I want you to share what is the best idea I have learned today, and how am I going to apply it? What is the best thing I learned today, and how do I apply it? Go. So I want to go through the offices. London, somebody share your best. So first of all, is this the most fun you've ever had with your clothes on? HR hates me. Okay, let's go through the offices. London, someone share something you've learned and how you're going to use it. London. Okay, Madrid.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. So I think for me, it's just around creating the habit. So understanding sort of an area that I can improve on, and just kind of every day try to kind of do more of it so it becomes a habit.
Yes, and identify one thing. We can't change everything all at once. So identify one thing and figure out how to make that habitual. And it doesn't take 20 days or 30 days or 60 days. It takes however long the other habit has been deeply embedded in your brain. Right? That number of days is not real. Okay, Madrid office. One thing you've gotten, how are you going to use it?
I would say working on the fear of failure. because I totally agree. It's just a blocker and it doesn't help. So working on me and with the guys of my team on this topic.
Very good. What about Penfield? One thing you learned, how are you going to use it? Okay, Research Park.
The meditation that you were talking about at the end, remembering to step back and breathe.
Yep. And 3 deep breaths resets your whole nervous system. A deeply relaxed person breathes 7 times a minute. And when you breathe, you know you're doing it correctly if your stomach moves more than your chest. Because most of us take shallow breaths when we're stressed out and our brain doesn't get enough oxygen and blood to it. So breathe through your stomach. Good. Someone here.
So the one thing I noticed is like I'll be better tomorrow than I am today.
I'll be better tomorrow than I am today. Awesome. Downtown Austin.
I picked the hedgehog principles, and more specifically, going to each team member and asking them, how do you think you fit in to the company as a whole, comparing that across the entire team, and then trying to communicate from my perspective, what does that actually look like, and how are you affecting the company as a whole?
And I'm local, so if there's ever anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you're interested in more articles or podcasts or interviews, they're all on my website. I send out a newsletter once a month. I don't market anything. I just send an article. So if you want to sign up for that, it's on my homepage. And connect with me. LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I share the crappy days, not just the awesome days.
I have a question.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with the content, but I would like to know a little bit about the training or work that you do towards presenting the subject, any subject. Like, how do you prepare yourself to do a fantastic delivery?
Oh, thank you.
How much it takes? Like, how much do you practice? Do you record yourself? Like, what techniques do you apply to do that?
Well, so I got to speak at a conference with Malcolm Gladwell a couple weeks ago, and I was so nervous. And so I go through the general rule of his whole 10,000 hour rule. I think is very, very legit because I've been doing this professionally since 1997. And so for me, I still prepare usually, like for this class, I prepared a ton because I've never combined the 2 topics before. And so the rule of thumb is you spend an hour for every 10 minutes of presentation. Now, take that or leave it. But I prepare a lot. My TED Talk, I rehearsed in my car for 3 months, my shower, everywhere. I practice all the time. And I don't always do well. Like I mess up. I cried on stage in front of 650 people on Monday.
Do you memorize some sentences that you always want to put out?
So what I do is I create notes. I start by researching all of the topic, and then I create like a slide, and then I have all the notes pages, and then I transition it to 3 slides per page and write the salient notes that I really need to remember, and then I do 9 slides a page, and I do the 1 or 2 points that I really want to hit home that I might forget, and I put those on the page. So I have notes. I use notes. Yeah. You're welcome. Other questions before I let you go? And I know we're moving into the next Slido question. I believe you're opening the next one, right?
Yeah, all of them are open.
All of them are open. All right. Other questions? What do you think? It was the first time we did this. You like it? Did you learn something? Can you apply it? Awesome. Well, if you need something, like I said, other than today, I'm going to the hospital now and discharging my husband. And he looks like this old man because he can't use anything on his right-hand side, so his arm is in a cast, and he has a walker where he has one arm up in the walker. And he looks so, I know, it's so sad, but I keep making fun of him. I need to stop. You guys, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.